Creative Assembly apparently wants to keep everyone on their toes when it comes to Total War 3 Kingdoms. Absolutely unexpected, on a Friday afternoon, we got to see our first actual gameplay footage of the latest title. There's a ton of content to dive into, and combined with about 5 other articles I found Friday before the reveal dropped, I've got a pretty good picture of some mechanics inside of the game. I'm going to switch things up from my usual short video style, run through the trailer, and give you a breakdown of the subjects I want to cover as we watch. Before we get down into it though, I of course want to emphasize that this is alpha footage. There will be unfinished animations, image and art placeholders, and possible low texture models present. And as always, everything you see today is subject to change. First, a look at the UI, battle interface, and design aesthetics of the video. Heavily romanticized of course, but very beautifully designed. About everything is based off of ink spread and brush strokes the Western world loves to see in Eastern styled media. Setting up the scenario, the Seas of Xiapi by Xiao Xiao in 199 CE, Creative Assembly very much clings to that style, which does really set the theme of Three Kingdoms nicely. Taking a look at our first actual glimpse of the battle interface, we see a completely revamped army layout, and it's unlike anything we've seen to date. Starting on the far left block, we have the overall battle stats. At the top is the historical battle title, which we can assume is then replaced by whatever battle we are in at the time. It's a subtle but a nice touch. Below that, our total unit count and troops count. Now of course there aren't that many units or troops at this point, but it is already factoring reinforcements, something that I hope is removed in the future until reinforcements actually arrive. Type of weather and season clearly has effects on the battlefield, and a nice painted picture gives us an idea as to the landscape. Our last two overall battle indicators are the capture point numbers and the percentage of settlement damage, which like in previous titles could imply that the higher the percentage, the greater the penalties are for the defenders. We are going to shift over to the right side real quick, as the unit cards themselves will take a little bit to go over. These buttons are fairly straightforward as well. You have your balance of power, your pause, start, and speed buttons, and the minimap, with the heroes' heads taking up a huge part, hopefully something that will get smaller as we zoom in. There's also what might be a crane or some other birds mixed in with clouds, which is most likely the tactical overview button. Now the unit bar itself is probably the biggest change to the battle UI we've ever seen, and its layout goes for more than just battles. It's broken up most simply as this. In a single army, you can have up to 3 retinues of men. Each of these retinues is led by a general or hero that you have recruited on the campaign map, which in turn has a selection of troops and special unit formations specific to that general or hero that you can recruit from based on what kind of subclass they belong to. As for how many people we can field on the battlefield at once, it is a wild guess, though some quick photoshopping has it at 40 units and 3 general cards without the consideration for reinforcements. The hero general cards look pretty well drawn, and it looks like they have a health bar at the bottom, though that's not for certain, and the white, egg, round looking things at the bottom might be special weapons or items that each general has the potential to obtain. Mind you, that generals and heroes have no quest missions like they did in Warhammer, rather they start with certain items and can loot wounded or dead generals for special items as you could in Warhammer. The unit cards themselves are unlike any art style from previous games, and this very much seems a trend that we are likely to see going forward. From a design perspective, I think it's one of the best unit portrayals that fits the theme of any game. The units themselves aren't colored in, but the weapons are, showcasing them and allowing you to pretty easily determine what type of unit they are. The bottom right of each card shows a unit rank system in a rather strange way than what we're used to, but I imagine it would be pretty easy to pick up on. One final noticeable UI design on the unit cards is the arrows streaking across the card when they are under fire. Again, it's a nice subtle touch, but it's something we haven't seen in a Total War game and shows their emphasis on design. And lastly for this section, a quick little cinematic camera from Warhammer 2 has been put into Three Kingdoms, which is a very nice addition for YouTubers, influencers, and players who love getting those smooth cinematic shots of the battle. Rolling on, one of my biggest letdowns, I guess you could call it, were the battle animations throughout the trailer, with a couple of exceptions, one of them being the movement between the horse and the rider, which seems to flow much more naturally than in previous titles. And again, this is alpha footage, and there are clearly tweaks and finalizing that can be done in the upwards of 6 to 10 months before we get the release. The movement of troops across the battlefield were pretty decent. They didn't all move at exactly the same way in the same time, but it was the charge, the collision, and the battle animations that we saw between the Yellow Dragon Axemen that threw up my first red flag. The Axemen are swinging entirely too hard and way too quick to be close to believable. Not to mention that there are units 5 ranks deep that are also swinging their axes as if the enemy were right in front of them. I get the romanticized exaggeration and that it is a huge part of this game, But if all we see are these exaggerated over-the-top battle animations from standard units, it'll just look ridiculous. Again, with the shot of the second charge, we see a yellow dragon axeman get thrown 20 feet or more back from a standard unit. A hit from a hero in this game? Sure, I'm okay with that. But a regular unit tossing another regular unit back, I think is more of a malfunction animation than what will actually happen. Moving on, I loved seeing the scaling of the walls with the bamboo poles. It really brought back kind of a Shogun 2 feel. But if you watch it a few times, you'll notice a few things. First, the poles don't actually touch the walls, they hover. Second, your units are doing the same thing, scaling the walls but hovering about a foot off the wall. And finally, they're scaling it at about 5 feet a leap, which is a little ridiculous and just looks plain goofy. These next set of animations with the cavalry charge I'm sure triggered a lot of Total War fans, but surprisingly, didn't really bug me. Cavalry charges in a historical setting have been so inadequate for so long that I think they need a little bit of punch like this. I think that the charges we saw could be tuned down just a hair, but is better than what we've seen in a historical title, especially say in Thrones. Also, check out that dude that just straight up ignored that charge. Well done. The other exception to this animation rule is going to break my usual video style as well, as I'm molding it in with my last subject, the duel. We've been curious as to how the duel system would work, and this is one area that did not disappoint, but does raise some questions. The animations of this duel were superb, fighting to dismount each other first, then going into melee combat. Creative Assembly brought in specific martial artists into the studio to track these exact motions needed in the duels, and if I remember correctly, each hero has their own set of interactions. The duel is going to be a great addition to the fantasy side of Three Kingdoms, and if we can pan back a bit, we can see the drastic effects either winning or losing the battle can provide. One thing to note, and this was mentioned in one of the articles I read, is that you can capture heroes and generals, as one of the press players was able to capture Lu Bu instead of killing him. How that affects the campaign has yet to be revealed, but it does provide some interesting mechanics in terms of diplomacy. One of my biggest questions with duels is what goes on in the overall battle while you're focused in on these two heroes fighting. If you pay attention to the time between Lu Bu getting unseated and Xia Hodun following suit, an estimated 3.5 minutes have passed, and Cao Cao has lost about 130 men, so the battle is still going. However, once the actual duel starts, 30 seconds or more pass with not another man lost by Cao Cao, but units are moving along the minimap. Do we still get to control these units while the duel is going on, or is it something where they'll just continue in a straight line from the last order given? It was 3.5 minutes before the two heroes officially started fighting, so how long will these duels last? I don't want people misinterpreting this as me hating the concept of duels. I absolutely love it. My concern is a forced focus on a duel and a lack of being able to control the battlefield while this upwards of 5-minute or more long duel ensues. Overall, the trailer has me quite hyped for the game, despite some of the conditions in this early alpha build. This is really something different from Creative Assembly. The UI is gorgeous and period fitting, and the reorganization of the army mechanics will surely shake up the campaign, and I'd love to see just how multiplayer works with these same mechanics. I appreciate you watching as I switch this video type up a bit. Let me know your thoughts on the video as well as the gameplay video in the comment section down below. Subscribe and turn notifications on to stay up to date with the channel. This is Havoc, and I'll see you in the next one.